And I want to try to explain my year planning a bit more than yesterday, not with graphs and something, but the principle. I showed you the different blocks I use, and I will show you how I create an annual plan. So from a principle point of view, so maybe you have some interesting ideas. I will go back 2 years, and when we started in November 2017, was a very it was a situation that comes very fast for me. A few days, and the decision was made. And the situation was, David is a special and highly talented athlete. It's very interesting to work with such an athlete, and he was very successful at a young age. And he was still just 27 years old, and from my point of view, not yet at the end of his potential. So it's a pleasure, and I was happy. But every medal has two sides. He had weak points. He's in 2007 he was already 10 years in the world class. As a junior he was a world class athlete, and then from 2007 10 years high performance training. So he had weak points and injuries. He had no good results in 2016 and 17, and didn't peaking at the main competitions. So. And he had maybe a regression in his physical strength, I thought. So that on the one side you have a highly talented athlete, very, very nice to work with him, and on the other side this. So it's in a situation with a lot of pressure. A lot of people are looking to you. He was a bit confused about the situation, and so we had to think about what our goals. So what we want to do together. Where are our vision? And we have 3 points. We want to get back to performances over 22 meters. 2 years ago, you have a good chance to win medals with that performance. Now it changed, but I think it's our opinion or our goal. 22 meters or a new personal best. We want to peak when it counts. Major competitions are the most important for us. And we want to go a long-term development or a long-term run. We have a long way, so Tokyo was our first goal. And he wants to go to Paris and join his last Olympic Games in 2024. To do this, there are some needs and changes, so I think we have to introduce. So first step sounds a bit simple, but we have to create a professional environment. He changed his training base. We are training in Leipzig, and as his old coach, he was in Chemnitz, a very, very good training base with good conditions. So, but in Leipzig there were no professional environment. We want to promote his strength and eliminate his weakness. Strengths mostly his power and his speed and technique, where I talked about, and his weakness, so he's a big guy, he has a low back and so on. And I think a new stimuli in training was needed. He was 27 years old, 10-year high performance training. I think there was the time to do something other, to create stimuli to develop him further, to make him stronger. So, and that's the planning part in the methods and exercises maybe. So this is our training base in Leipzig, East Germany. We are training at the Olympic Center there, but there is not a focus on throwing events. There is a focus on sprint and hurdle. But there was a focus on throwing events till 2012 or something like that, and so there are facilities which you use as thrower, which you need as thrower. We had a good infrastructure in Leipzig. We have our scientific partner there, short way. It is near to Chiembaum. This is the training base of our federation, where we do a lot of training camps. And we have an indoor track, we have an outdoor stadium, we have some additional facilities like weight rooms, a sports hall, ergo center. We have recovery tools, so it's okay. So I think the throwing house I ride normally because there was a storm.
Sure.
Now it's an open air building, and we can't at the moment we can't use it. So the rebuilding is still in progress. I hope we can use it end of the year. Okay. So I said there was no environment. So this time we have a small environment. This is I call it the inner circle of our team. In the middle you see our training group. We this year he has a training partner. He has a good relationship. They are pushing themselves. They are fun. It's a good thing. It's a shot putter too. I have a assistant coach. Maybe some of you know him, Lothar Tischendorf. He's the former coach of Martina Hellmann and the former shot putter Sack, René Sack and Peter Sack. So it's really good. He has a lot of experience of coaching, 40 years, different athletes. So he's very helping me well, very good. So then we have the scientific support. We have our federation, our club. We founded a sovereign group to make such things as marketing and to organize some more support. We have a psychologist for mental training, and he supports our coaching process. It's really good, really good. I develop a progress in my doing too. We have a medical team, 2 doctors, physiotherapists, and osteopath, and a nutritionist. So I think it's a background you need as an high-performance athlete. And so if you go outside the inner circle, there are a lot of more people. So I said we want to change the training. Shot put is shot put. There are things you have always to do, but there's more so. I mean more the planning part and the peaking of the performance and such things. So our aim was that we want to create a new or potential stimulus for an old or training experienced athlete, and we want to individualize and optimize his recovery phases because of his injury history. So we decided we have to do something, and the peak performance at the main competition. And for me, because he has his history was a classical good German throwing training, but he was always 10 years in the system. He needs a new stimuli. So, and for me, that's why was the decision easy. We are going over to a block training approach. Block training is characterized through different phases where you are concentrating on the development of one or two target abilities. So you are put the training load. You make it in different parts. So the classic block training has accumulation blocks where you focus on maximum strength development and basic technique. So in our opinion, we have a transmutation phase. It's the power and specific strength phase, and you have realization phases where you target maximum speed, technical perfection, and you intended full restoration, so on. And if you take here and look on this picture, you see what you do is you develop basic abilities, you go over to more specific abilities, and then you go into a peaking. And these 3 blocks together are a training stage, and it's a miniature of a year plan. So we have a compressed year plan, but it lasts not so long. So the duration of the stage depends on the so-called residual training effect. This is one of the basic concepts of this periodization type. And this means that if you stop training an ability, you have an effect which is for several weeks there. So maximum strength training here has a residual training effect of 30 days plus minus 5. It's an individual thing. David has long residual effect, so if we do 5 weeks no maximum strength training, he's not weaker. And different abilities have different residual effects, and these residual effects allows you to focus on 1 or 2 abilities without loss of performance in other abilities. So you can training load separate, can go in a sequence. And if you do this right, you have a superposition of these effects. Maximum strength comes to a peak and speed and so on. And you have at the end of an stage, you are in a peak performance stage. So one main advantage is that you have a reduced overall training load, because you are doing 2 weeks strength and you are 2 weeks doing each other things. And you're doing this 2 weeks a lot of strength, but over time you do lesser strength. Very, very concentrated, high stimuli, but then you have time to adapt. The athlete has time to adapt. And there is no development of maximum strength. And there are methods like strength training or eccentric strength training. Hypertrophy, I mentioned yesterday, we do it, but not a lot, not classical hypertrophy. And these accumulation blocks are the longest. And if we do a specific stage, the focus is more on peaking the maximum strength over neurological adaptations. And we are using highest intensities, low volumes. They're relatively slow, short. They last 1 to 3 weeks. And then the competition and peaking phase, we are just maintain maximum strength or use it as a primer for power training or speed training. The intensity goes up and very, very low volume. This lasts 1 to 7 days. So I think it sounds complicated, but it's very, if you have such a principle, it's very easy, like a puzzle. So this is an example for the preparation for the last European Indoor Championship. We did 4 stages, and this we prepare for these stages within a general training block, a bit of fitness training, and back to sports and something like that. And then we did 4 training stages. One general training phase is specific in the competition, and you see the competition phase was divided into 2 peaking phases. The last peaking phase is our pre-camp before the main competition, and in the first peaking phase we used a long 2 weeks block of 3 weeks block of realization, and we did a lot of competitions to peak the performance, competition training. That was the goal. So you have times where you sport from develops, and there are times where you sport from twice peaking.
How far is the periodization studies very set? Do you program some rest period then between the realization phase or lower intensity interval burnout accumulation? How do you kind of program that rest and adaptation phase into that?
I program recovery phases between the blocks too, but it's very individual and it depends on what kind of block you did. So accumulation block with high morphological loading is very taxing for the athlete. He needs a lot of recovery, and in the competition phase or something like that, very dual low volume, there's not so much need for recovery. So we do recovery phases, 2 weeks of loading, 1 week of deloading, something like that, or sometimes 5 days or 3 days deloading. So, but it's strongly depending on the phase of the year. And we are doing some monitoring to take a look on his state. So next slide, some information about the microcycle. I think it was maybe a thing we changed too, compared to this old training system. So a microcycle typically 7 days, yes, up to 14 days. It depends on the phase and what we are doing. To develop the target ability, strength, or specific strength, something. We do 3 to 6 main sessions. These are our focus sessions. They are important, and they are for the development of our goal. And between these sessions, we try to give him adequate time to recover. We do compensation sessions, stabilization, goes to the therapy, and so on and so on. Or we do fitness training or something like that. What him not does taxes. So in the total we do I think 9 to 10 sessions. It's the question what you count as a session. If he is doing mobility at home, it's a session. 9 to 10 total sessions a week, I think. And I like to do in the transportation phases of throwing double days. So we are preparing for the main session of the day in the morning, and in the evening there's the main load. I'm now nearly finished. I think we can go over in an open discussion. Dale showed some parameters from Tom, and I put tomorrow quick some from David together. It's not complete, but these are values from the last 2 years. These are not all-time best, I think. He's strong in such things like overhead throw. I think the vertical jumps, so Tom is better, but it's from a standing position, so not a run-up. He has quick feet, so there are abilities I think we don't quantify, or we are not always looking on. He's a very fascial type,
200 jerk.
so you have different ways to generate the power.
Split squat.
Difference of his training, like when he had those best years, like 2011, 12, 13. As I understand, you try to copy the same technique, but how much his training has changed because he's older, he don't probably have the same recovery, he has all those injuries that he has. So how much has his training changed, like compared to volume and maybe also exercises?
I don't have numbers from the old times or his old coach, so I think there had a lot changed due to his situation and his development of the last years. So if I see how he is adapt and how he is react on training, I think it's not easy to go this volume of the past years. It is. He definitely. It was important to do this. It's the base for him, I think. So that's. But I think he can handle such a training today.
When you laid out your plan, benchmarking like 2 to 4 weeks for this realization, maybe 4 weeks or 3 weeks, what benchmarks or what key metrics are you using to measure adaptation or looking for adaptation? When do you know to move to the next phase?
We're using mechanical outcomes or performance outcomes.
Okay.
So I do monitor velocity of the barbell. I monitor some metrics, specific movements, glide, something like that. We are using jump values, something like this. I do readiness testing, called movement jumps, or such things.
Okay, thanks.
So not
Are you using that like a once a week type thing, or like every session? Like we measure throwing.
the readiness on Monday,
Yeah.
and 2 times a week, additional times a week. So yeah.
All right, thanks.
Do you use technology like VMAX Pro? Or
Yes,
Yeah.
we are using the VMAX Pro. Yeah. I'm working with velocities, not with power waves.
Yes.
Yeah. But
Okay.
I think the same goal in the power phases.
What do you do in eccentric strength in competition period?
If we do eccentric training in the competition period, just in the accumulation block, and mostly in terms of complex training. So as a potentiation complex, to you're doing an eccentric exercise and couple it with a jump or something like that. So as a primer for
Thank you.
very low volume.
Low volume.
Yeah.
Are there special exercises that showed you that he's in good condition for throwing at that specific point in time? That if exercise X is good, then the throw is good?
It's overhead throwing. Overhead throwing with competition implement, but 6 kg. Overhead throwing 6 kg. If this goes up, he's in good state.
You talked about the planning and different blocks in the realization phase, the peaking phase. Did you track David's amount of days till he reached his peak form from stage to stage?
We have this.
Yeah, so you see it's the same amount of days every time till he reaches the top form.
So this combination, competition block, relation as a competition block, and follow up small peaking phase is a very good combination for him. And inside this blocks, I have a structure who works.
Yeah, in over the years, did you test it out?
Now we are working just 2 years, but we have now the 3 main competitions, and I tested it. So we are in a testing phase.
Okay, yeah. So
This is still in progress.
Yeah.
So I put some things in.
Yeah.
I put some things out.
He's just starting to know him
Yes.
and see his body's
We
adaptation.
are trying many things. Much.
David enjoying his training?
Yeah, for me the change of the stimuli were a big step. You know, when you work together with the coach for 10 years, you were used to the training stuff he did. And for me it was a tough decision to change, but I think it was a necessary step for my own development. And I talked a lot to Wilko before we decide to work together. And now I think we have a lot of fun. We have a nice relationship. We're not just coach and athlete. I think we can look us in the eye and talk about the stuff we did. And for me, that was a kind of development of myself and for the understanding of the training that I did.